No, 30% of people are on their phone while having sex.
Oh my
A third
goodness,
of
that's
people
hilarious.
are on their phone, yes, while having sex. So make no mistake, it's not just the scrolling.
My goodness.
It's during as well.
Wow. I've never thought about that. That's fascinating.
Try it next time, Lou. Try it.
I'd give it a go. I'd give it a go.
Sure,
See how
Nigel
that
will
goes
love
down. I think Nigel will be horrified.
But never have we been in a better position to do that than with an AI companion, because we are looking at someone or something who isn't going to judge us, who's going to validate us, who's going to be very responsive to us, who's going to give us all these needs that connect back into this fundamental need for intimacy that we have. And arguably, it also does quite a good job of providing commitment by being always present, and potentially of passion, because we can customize the look. We can have sexual experiences with our AI companions. We can get involved in role play. We can do all those sorts of things. So it is providing that very close, safe space for us. So that I think that there is a real understanding about why we end up in such close relationships, for some people, even romantic relationships with AI companions. It's worth considering as well that when we say the horse has already bolted, we know about 72% of teens have interacted with AI companions, and about 33% of Gen Z have taken up an AI companion for romantic purposes. So there's actually quite high numbers.
Can you say that number again? I'm sorry.
33%. So about a third of Gen Zers have had a romantic interest in trying a romantic AI companion. So that's a very high number, given that the research is only just starting and we have almost no safeguards on this type of AI companion. In some ways, our social media delay is looking at an older technology, whereas things are developing quicker than our safeguards are.
Acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which we're joining this conversation. We pay our respects to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today.
Hi, hello. Welcome to Pollination Media. Thank you so much for joining us. We've just been talking about how relevant this conversation is in this time, and how curious I am about what you two are about to say. Actually, I know very little about it from a kind of academic perspective, but I do know from a very lived experience of what we're going through now around AI and cyber psychology, which I'm really curious about finding out more, because that's the first time I've actually heard that term. So firstly, I would love you to introduce yourselves, please. Over to Bianca. Can you just tell us about yourself and your work?
Thank you, Louise. And Danny, it's an absolute pleasure for us to be here today and to be able to speak about a topic on something that has been emerging and is rapidly changing, even as we speak. So a huge thank you. I'm Dr. Bianca Klettke. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Psychology at Deakin University, where I lead the Deakin Cyber Psychology Group. My research is primarily in technology-facilitated violence, and one of the things that I think is the most important about the research is to translate it and actually make a difference within the community, organizations, so particularly also for parents, schools, and young people, and how to keep them safe online.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for your work. And Carrie.
Thank you very much for having us. Hi, Louise. Hi, Danny. So I'm Dr. Carrie Ewin, and I am a lecturer in the Faculty of Health School of Psychology at Deakin University. I'm also a member of the Cyber Psychology Group. And my research is really focused around human development. I have a background of developmental and educational psychology. So that's sort of the approach I take to things. And I'm really interested in how technology is changing families and changing development, which probably feels more relevant to us now than it ever has in the past. And I also lecture in adult development. So it all circles around development for me, which is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's so fascinating.
Great to have you here, by the way. And I'm coming from it from a different perspective. Plus, I also have two very significantly disabled and two kids with ID who use their laptops, use their iPads a lot more than you'd like, because it helps seizures. Actually, research has shown, and it also helps us as parents and them, give them something to do. So I'm coming from the different angle than Louise, who's trying to get the kids off their iPads. But this whole thing is that we talk about AI companions and how AI companions reduce loneliness and make people feel heard. And one of the questions I have to start with is, one, I've never really heard of cyber psychology, so I'm interested to know a little bit more about what that is. But also, who is using it and what happens to our human relationships once we're in this sort of bizarre world of using AI as a companion. So I know that's a double barrel, different ends, but yeah, if you can give us some idea on that, that'd be great.
I'd love to talk about cyber
Please
psychology.
do, because you know what? When I first saw that written down, I'm like, cyber psychology is like, it's a term I've not heard before, but it resonates immediately. Like, I'm like, oh, right, yeah, I can understand where that concept is come out from, just purely because I feel like I'm also struggling all the time on a daily basis with cyber psychology, and how come we've all come to this point where we're grappling with it on a daily basis, and this high level complexity of dealing with the cyber world and the psychology around it. So yes, please, Bianca, I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, I think the important thing about cyber psychology is obviously we have the cyber component and the psychology, right? And when we think of cyber, I think we immediately think of IT and all the issues, around IT. And one of the things we've actually realized, and a lot of our research is actually now very much across different disciplines where we combine IT and psychology, because so much of what we know, in psychology is related to cyber behaviors, right? Because a lot of the behaviors online are, not all of them, but are an extension of, face-to-face behaviors often. So the same, a lot of the same things apply in many instances. So, and whereas in psychology, we're not trained in IT issues per se. Well, Carrie, you are, but not other people like me aren't. So it's really helpful to get the IT perspective to see, what are some of the solutions we can get, from that. And what do we also know about human behavior, and how can we implement what we know from human behavior into, IT and anything, sort of online. And this has really, really broad implications, from prevention programs, for example, for harmful online behaviors. But it's also now, when we think about, online therapy or online, interventions and stuff like that, where we really start to utilize IT for human behavior. So it's both, we can provide IT with some of the things that are relevant from human behavior, but also the other way around. How can we utilize IT to, help with some of the things, even, sometimes now medical conditions, interventions, et cetera, et cetera. So it's actually a really broad spectrum. But we can also look at it from, also now online crime. So for example, romance scams, right? It's like, why are some people, more likely to fall for a romance scam, et cetera? Like, there's so many areas now in that where these two overlap in terms of, so very broadly, really cyber psychology is, I think, where both cyber and psychology intersect, and how both disciplines can help each other to gain a better understanding of what's happening online.
Wow, fascinating. And so how is the work around psychology, how then is it changed so dramatically when you move into that space? If you say it's an extension of yourself, then why do we experience such strange behavior, say like in a Facebook feed, when people communicate in this appalling manner, in this very polarized manner that we wouldn't do if we were face to face? How is it that the technology is allowing us to interact in such a negative manner that we wouldn't accept as human beings if we were actually looking at each other face to face?
I think it's a brilliant question that we ask very often, don't we, Carrie? We're trying to find the reason why. So one of the, and when I say it's an extension, I should probably have qualified that a bit better. But like, let's say, because we were talking about AI companions and, online relationships, let's call it that, right? So we obviously have in-person relationships, and then we have these online relationships. And what I mean by, in extension, it's sort of, when we look at sexting, for example, right? You're 100% right, Louise. Particularly one of my big bugbears is getting sent unwanted nudes, right? It's like you're 100% right. We don't run around and all go woohoo, sort of thing, but we do it online, right? People send unwanted nudes all the time. So why do we engage in this?
I'm like, go Bianca. I've not had one.
You're
either,
getting those. That's amazing. I mean, it's never come to me.
I suspect generational differences could also
I think it's a generational
quite relevant
difference. Absolutely, because there's always a story now with my stepson Jai, who is he a millennial or is he Gen Z? I think he's a millennial. He has a story, which I think most young generations do. I've accidentally sent a photo of me in the nude to the wrong person, so I'm a Gen Xer. I just don't have that framing. I just don't have like, there's no way I'm sending a photograph of myself to somebody, and I would make sure that it goes to the right person if I did. Anyway,
but
always good to see who you send it to.
On the phone.
Anyway, sorry, Bianca, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, so I was just sort of saying that it is interesting because there's certain behaviors, right, that are, you're absolutely right. And I mean, it's the same, you're absolutely right, the same for cyberbullying, right? So people say things online that they would not say, in person. So, and the concept behind that is called online disinhibition. But online disinhibition is not necessarily positive or negative. It's just online disinhibition. And it means that we act differently online than what we would do in person. There's actually positive online disinhibition. So, for example, for young people who might be gender diverse or, sexual minority or with a disability, it's sometimes a really good space because they can connect with others who are like them. And so it can actually lead them to share things that they might otherwise perhaps be too afraid to do, with groups that are different from them. And so it can actually be positive. But then there's also what we call toxic online disinhibition. And that's the bit that is the negative. It's sort of like, actually, we behave differently online because we know there's a screen, we know we're anonymous, we know, people can't come after us, sort of thing. And research is actually showing quite convincingly that it's one of the biggest predictors of harmful online behaviors. So, for example, for cyberbullying and, other, some of the really, bad online behaviors, this toxic online disinhibition is actually the driver. It's in essence exactly as you said. It's that we know the online environment is different to in person, therefore we can act differently.
Yes, and then I guess it's also emphasized because you hear that conversation so much in the media now as well, that there's a negative bias towards being drawn to that negativity. So that gets pulled out of the conversation as well, instead of it actually being a more positive discourse around, minority groups connecting, people who in regional areas who might want to communicate about the fact that they are feeling lonely, overwhelmed, or questioning their sexuality, their gender, and finding those particular kind of groups online and that positivity around it. But I guess that's then the media overlapping as well on all this kind of the negative influence of, these conversations. And I guess also we see it so more prevalently sometimes in our feeds, and sometimes there are positive conversations, but I steer away from Facebook, particularly because of the feed back and forth, and I get quite shocked on some of the conversations that are had.
I think that also has some real links to our AI companions that we're talking about. The flip side of this is that concept of the safe space and how we develop intimacy. And we know as humans, we have three important components to developing relationships. One is intimacy, another is passion, and then our third is commitment. So when we think about intimacy, we can imagine those feelings of closeness, connectedness, and having that sort of communication with people. And we seek this, from humans from when they're very young. We have attachment with our parents and those really close relationships. And we have those same attachments with our romantic partners. And a big part of that is that feeling of complete self-disclosure, building that really close, safe feeling. But never have we been in a better position to do that than with an AI companion, because we are looking at someone or something who isn't going to judge us, who's going to validate us, who's going to be very responsive to us, who's going to give us all these needs that connect back into this fundamental need for intimacy that we have. And arguably, it also does quite a good job of providing commitment by being always present, and potentially of passion, because we can customize the look, we can have sexual experiences with our AI companions, we can get involved in role play, we can do all those sorts of things. So it is providing that very close, safe space for us. So that I think that there is a real understanding about why we end up in such close relationships, for some people, even romantic relationships with AI companions.
But Carrie, specifically, when it comes down to, a relationship is between two people, sometimes, two entities, whatever you'd like to call them. But it also is about disagreement.
Yeah.
It makes you understand, be social, create your opinion, and learn. And it seems like a lot of the people who have this attachment to AI create an opinion which is not based on a real depth of opinion that they've created by themselves, but which is therefore stopping them from having, which causes them to go into these sort of really quite extreme groups, because they have no understanding of what is right and what is wrong. It's like, the research that says if you have an older brother, you'll move more to the right. If you have an older sister, you'll move more to the left, in your opinion,
That's
so
interesting.
I just listened to a podcast this morning, funnily enough, which talked about the research about that. Yeah, fascinating. I'm trying to work out where I am with that. So, what are we losing ultimately in society, in ourselves, in our own opinion, when this AI relationship costs us nothing?
What's the balance, I guess? What is the balance between what are we losing and what are we gaining? And then where are the safeguards around it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you're raising a really good point there, that as much as validating feels great and makes us feel very safe, it is not a good replica of a human relationship, which are messy. We don't get the input and feedback from people that we like. And I think one of the concerns we have is this idea of displacement, that if we are consistently talking with AI and it feels really good, we may lose any motivation to engage in human relationships, which are not likely to feel as good for us. So, we can expect that we may over time become de-skilled in some of our social communication. And whether that's a serious concern might depend on the person that we're looking at who could use it. I think arguably for adolescents, younger children, and perhaps our emerging adults who might be at our younger end, perhaps up to around 25 years old, there might be a phase of their life where it's very important that they're building those social relationships and their skills. And we know that adolescents are learning where they belong in the world and how social rules work and things like that. So if they are displacing that time, it may be that there's a loss there that perhaps can't be so easily compensated. But that could look very different if we're considering older adults who might be quite lonely, who might not have somebody to talk to and who already have those social skills built up as much as they need. Then perhaps, especially if we were thinking about somebody with cognitive decline, that ability to have someone who's always present, who's going to understand, who's going to be patient, who's going to repeat, who's going to offer scaffolding and support, that might be something that a human relationship couldn't easily offer, or perhaps the cost of offering that would be quite overwhelming.
Can I add a couple of things to that? I've got 3 things, and I hope I'll remember all 3, but I'll start with the first one that is probably the most important. And it actually has to do with how do we process online information? Or let's be specific with AI companions, right? So we interact with an AI companion. How is this processed by our brain? Well, it's interesting to know that our brain doesn't distinguish whether something is AI or real, or it's kind of like, when you think about why are people supposed to, think positive thoughts or do affirmations, et cetera, because your brain doesn't care whether something is real or whether something. So even when we watch things, right, it lays a trace in the neurons in our brain don't have neurons. Oh, here are the AI neurons. Here are the real world neurons. Not how it works. Our brain, information is information, right? That's how we're wired from literally, millions of years ago. So one of the things that's really interesting is that if we then, engage with the AI companion, our brain then wires us a little bit to think, oh, this is what it ought to be, right? So it develops a schema of our ideal relationship as one where there's never a disagreement, where someone is always super positive towards us, and where someone always feeds us with exactly the feedback that we want to hear. So that's dangerous, right? Because in the long run, what that means is we've got this schema that, exactly as Carrie said, we think that's what a relationship should look like, right? And we know reality does not look like that at all. So the other thing that worries me a little bit about that is the fact that we know, for example, since the internet, social anxiety in young people has increased substantially. But do you know what the best thing is to actually overcome social anxiety?
Well, I don't know. Hanging out with
It's
your
exposure.
mates. Exposure.
Actually,
hanging out with
exposure.
your mates. Yes.
Yes, it's actually exposure to the thing that you're most worried about. Exposure therapy, and Carrie can probably talk more about that as well from her counseling knowledge. But we need to, at least to a certain degree, face what we're worried about, right? But if we have something that constantly feeds, us and makes us feel great, why would we even do that?
Absolutely.
Why would we seek exposure to something we don't like, right? So that sort of tendency to avoid negative emotions, I think, gets, fed more and more and gets, supported more and more, because there's a way now where we can just plainly avoid that. So where does that lead us to? So hypothetically.
Yeah, absolutely. I discovered a new word, sycophancy, the other day, with that continual AI reaffirming all of your ideas when you're trying to nut out a project. And you're like, can you please, we need some rigor. I need some analysis. I need some feedback. I need you to critically analyze my work. I don't need you to continually saying how amazing I am. I don't need that. But I guess I'm also, I'm a 50-year-old woman and I'm not a child, and not having that kind of positive re-engagement all the time. I know that is not good. But then we know this, and the research is there and it's developing. And I feel like we really are at the coalface, particularly now. And like we said earlier, we have children of similar ages. And I have a 15-year-old son and you have a 15-year-old daughter. We're all, that we're there watching our young adults growing up into, our teenagers growing up into adults. And then what is the safeguards around it? What is being done with the research in order to be able to scaffold and help children, particularly around navigating this technology and our interaction with chatbots?
I think that's a great point, Lou. I'm glad that you brought up children. Something that I guess that's useful for us to keep in mind with kids as well is they're particularly vulnerable, both in that they're learning social skills for the first time, but also that we know that children are more likely to see a character like an AI companion as real, that developmental phase of distinguishing real from not real hasn't fully developed yet. So we know young kids are more likely to have a stronger attachment to AI even than adults. So arguably, we're introducing this at a time when children are most vulnerable.
I mean, obviously, the great experiment has happened. We've all been handed an iPhone and, the horse is bolted. It's like we've all got the iPhone. Yes. We're all scrolling around. We're all engaging in this technology all the time. And now we are, and the children have got it. They've been handed it, some at too young an age. My son, for instance, is sat gaming with his friends. And we're very much about, like, you've got to get out, you've got to socialize, you've actually got to do the thing that is hard. You've got to go out and socialize. And he is desperate to. He is. I'm like, get on your phone, call all your mates. They are down the road, literally a walk away, and they will not come out because they're all gaming and they communicate through their games. And so it's really difficult for him to break out of that environment because all of his friends are in it. It's really tricky.
Can I just ask though, Lou, but they are, even though they're all on their computers, they are all together. And they are, I mean, that I would say, I agree that we all need to get out and we need to have face-to-face interaction, but they're actually with real people. Yeah. And they're actually communicating and working together like a team would do if they went outside on an assault course. They went outside just to play tennis or cricket or whatever, So that I think is actually, even though it shouldn't be done all the time, is a positive when you can't necessarily all get out and you can all come together like we're doing now on this podcast. And they can still have that social unperfect interaction, which is so
I agree, Danny.
I do agree that they shouldn't do it all the time, but I think that sometimes is quite positive with when possibly people can't get out,
particularly around COVID time, particularly when a lot of the younger kids were isolated, and it was a really good connection to having conversation with their friends. But I guess the and of it is that my son is competing with billionaire gaming products that are their main objective is to keep you online playing this game. So while I love the conversation that he has and I listen to him, he's laughing and he's screaming and he's shouting, and there's all these there's lots of killing, I'm afraid. There's lots of blood. And, there's a lot of, it's quite horrendous, but I have to just, but the aim of the game is to keep him playing and keep him engaged. And no matter what happens, he is sat on a chair, which is horrifying for you as well, Danny, because you're an osteopath. He's sat on a chair. And if I'm not there engaging and kind of going, come on, you've got to get off, he will sit there for 12 hours and he won't move. And he might be talking to, I'm
saying there are bad,
so it's
bad as well.
Absolutely. There's a balancing act, isn't it? It's a continual balancing act between the two.
I think it's probably for parents, one of the biggest questions, right? It's like, what do we do about it and how do we reduce the risk? And one of the things that I did find interesting is there's some research out there that actually particularly we've been looking a lot at the potential harmful impacts of social media, right? And one of the things that's actually really interesting is with regards to mental health, that obviously the kids who spend a lot of time on social media, it impacts their mental health. But those who don't have any social media, it also does. Those who actually fared the best were those that spend, I think it was around an hour on social media. So I thought it was really interesting because what that actually shows is that, too much of it is very harmful. None of it is also a bit of a problem because they're losing that connection, right? It's that fine line between, where can it be positive and where, when does it tip over into being negative? But when you were talking about the solution earlier, one of the things that does worry me, though, is that you brought up what is exactly what happens, right? The algorithms of everything, be it the games, be it social media, be it the bots, they only have one motivation, and that is to keep you on them for as long as they possibly can, at any price, right? That's what we need to know about them. So given that we know that that's the motivation from these algorithms, right? What do we do about it? And one thing that does frustrate me, though, is that I feel like a lot of legislation is post hoc. Yeah. So, for example, the notified bots that came out and then were banned. It's like, why did they come out to begin with? Why do we never look at products before we actually let them out on, people into the wild? I mean, as you said earlier, the great experiment is done. But that's exactly the thing. We never thought about questioning. We never questioned AI, right? It's sort of, why do we not have any legislation around any of this before it comes out, and why is it all post hoc? That's probably my biggest question, really.
Well, we have the social media delay. So I think we have an attempt to address some of those issues. I think you've been describing a great point, Lou, with pervasive app design, which is when those features of the apps are designed to keep kids engaged. We know that games move on, or videos move on to the next level automatically. We know that there aren't breaks built into apps. We know that they don't encourage a lot of engagement with caregivers. So we know that, apps are designed that way because they do want kids and families to stay engaged. But I should also just add, I agree with you too, Danny. And I think what you're describing is called joint media engagement, which is a really interesting area of research. Which looks,
Danny knew that already.
Yeah, of course you did, Danny. I know. And you're absolutely right. There are benefits that we shouldn't overlook. When kids use a device with a caregiver, it can build language development, it can build bonding, sense of closeness, and the same thing can be true of friends. You have something in common that you're discussing. It can be quite warm, moments when you're playing games and you're laughing together. And there can be a lot of scaffolding opportunities where, parents might know a bit more about apps and they can point things out. And, if it's a maths app, they're going to know what they're doing, whereas maybe a little kid wouldn't. So there are lots of great opportunities. So it is that real balance. And I think we have seen the social media delay be our first sort of attempt to deal with it. We've seen that it's taken off really quickly with many other countries around the world, like the UK, signing up to do this. Yeah. We haven't seen a full evaluation come out. We know that is being worked on, but I have to say the early signs that we're seeing don't seem particularly positive right now. It seems that many young people have gotten round the ban without too much difficulty. From a technical perspective, it was always going to be really hard. And even when it is possible, we see a lot of parents, a lot of caregivers who aren't sure that banning it is the right way to go. So whether that legislation is going to work, I don't know. We know that app designers and social media companies are either don't have the solution or aren't particularly willing to try to engage a solution. So I don't think we have the perfect answer right now.
Yeah.
But I think even with the social media ban, the one thing to keep in mind, it was after the fact, right? It was almost like, oh, the government said social media bad for young people, therefore we ban. I think my argument earlier was that no one thought about it beforehand. So we let it loose. It's like, we let the tiger run loose and then go, oh, let's catch it. And I think that's what it seems or feels like with almost everything that's happening at the moment, even with AI. Are we going to try and catch it in a few years because we realize, oops, it's gone too far, right? So the eSafety Commission has a concept that's called safety by design, whereby they encourage, everyone coming out with a product to have those inbuilt safety mechanisms. But it's a voluntary thing. So, when you look at notify apps, they certainly didn't look at safety by design, so it's sort of, that's, I think, a little bit what I mean by, I think at the moment, everything we do is post hoc. It's literally trying to catch that tiger that we've let loose. So, at what stage are we going to decide that we're not going to do that? I think that's one of those questions.
Yeah. And it's a marketing perspective, isn't it? Because we're being continually marketed to. It's a product that we are buying into, and the power is held by a very few people, and so it's kind of, that's the framework that we're in. and these technologies need to be introduced with a different mindset, with a whole different kind of structure in place in order to be able to have kind of any really real safeguards around it. And it's almost, I mean, we went to a conference. I'm not going to speak to very well of this, but the AI conference I went to a couple of weeks ago as part of Small Giants Academy, we hold it as Action and Wisdom. And they were just talking about how to try and safeguard Australia to stop information coming in, so then it actually gets a buffer before even coming into Australia. So then we can have these safeguards in place. We'll kind of go, are we willing to have this technology here? Are we willing to have the nude apps? And that gets stopped and buffered before it's just infiltrated. And we just then have to, as you say, chasing the dragon to try and implement change when the horse is already bolted. So, you know, it's a big question, isn't it, that we are grappling with in these times.
It's worth considering as well that when we say the horse is already bolted, we know about 72% of teens have interacted with AI companions, and about 33% of Gen Z have taken up an AI companion for romantic purposes. So there's actually quite high numbers.
Can you say that number again? I'm sorry, 33%.
So about a third of Gen Zers have had a romantic interest in trying a romantic AI companion. So that's a very high number, given that the research is only just starting and we have almost no safeguards on this type of AI companion. In some ways, our social media delay is looking at an older technology, whereas things are developing quicker than our safeguards are.
And the safeguard is screaming, really, what the actual research is saying is there are a lot of lonely people out there. Essentially, if you are willing to engage in a romantic relationship, 30% of the Gen Z are willing to engage in something. And when you say 33%, what's the sex split on that? Is it more male, or is it more female, or is it more male engaging in these romantic relationships? Because that's also really telling as well. And then also there's a loneliness epidemic, if you know, about community and connection and getting out there, which is obviously been going on for some time, and this is the alarm bell, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. And you know, we know that loneliness is this subjective feeling that somebody would like to have more social companionship. So it's not necessarily about the number of relationships we have. You can actually have a lot of people around you, but still feel really lonely. It's that subjective feeling. So you know, AI does have a lot to offer there. We talked about safeguards, and that's really important, but we also know that a lot of people who do engage with AI companions tell us that in the moment, at least, they do feel less lonely. And we do have specific types of companions built for older people, with maybe some additional safeguards in place around privacy. So, for example, some companions might forget the previous day's conversation, which will help with those feelings of loneliness. So it's certainly not all bad.
Absolutely. I can imagine if you're an older person and you are feeling lonely and you don't have many friends around you, you can't get out, you're not particularly mobile, and you can communicate with a chat bot. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely it.
I wouldn't mind just adding another perspective to that. Carrie and I actually had a chat about that yesterday, and that's an evolutionary perspective. So let's say, hypothetically, we're going to get young people to train their relationship capability through AI bots, right? That's how they learn, how they have relationships. And these relationships are perfect. No disagreements. Everybody always, speaks kindly to them and agrees with them all the time, makes them feel, wonderful, makes them feel less lonely. So at the end of the day, we don't really have any desire that we go out and meet people in person. Well, for us, if we think about it, right, as a species, what does that mean, though? That means we're not going to procreate until we procreate with robots. I mean, until, and that day is probably not so far, so far away that, we're going to have AI robots, have babies for us, sort of thing, because we're actually losing the ability to, as a species, to be with other people. I think that is one of the, we need to actually face that is one of the consequences of this. And this might seem a bit doomsday-ish, but that is what happens, again, because our brains are not going to be, equipped to handle a real relationship, a real, what it takes to have. And I should probably, this probably gives away my age, I should stop saying real, because for a lot of young people, the relationships they have with the AI bots are real. So I need to, not say, real, but in person, perhaps, sort of thing. So yeah, where do we land? Like, are we going to extinguish ourselves through this from an evolutionary perspective, until we get AI robots to have babies for us?
Well, Bianca, I think that we are potentially heading that way in more ways than one. Just even my own relationship with my husband. I'm not going to go into graphic detail on this one, but and I'm Gen Z. I'm not. I'm Gen X. Not having the phone in the bedroom. We've just done this because obviously, we are talking a lot about, children's phone use. We have to reflect on our own phone use and our own interaction with technology. And so there's a lot of conversation around, kids should get off it while we're holding the phone and scrolling through Instagram ourselves, so there's technology hygiene. And I've said to Nigel, my partner, just said, I just don't want to be on my phone in the bedroom. I also don't want my daughter seeing me on the phone so much. I now have a place for my phone. And it's really made a massive difference on that level of way I get up in the morning and I interact, and I don't immediately grab for my phone and quickly look who's texted me in the middle of the night, because I'm from England originally. So there's a lot of chat goes on in the middle of the night in my WhatsApp group. So, just those small bits of hygiene around technology. But again, the statistics are saying that people aren't having as much sex because they are back to back scrolling on their phone,
Oh, no. 30% of people are on their phone while having sex.
Oh, no. Oh, my
goodness. A third of people
hilarious.
are on their phone, yes, while having sex. So make no mistake, it's not just the scrolling.
Oh my goodness.
It's during as well.
Oh, wow. I've never thought about that. That's
try it next time, Lou. Try it.
I'd give it a go. See how
Nigel
that
will
goes
love
down.
it.
I think Nigel will be horrified.
Let me just do some online shopping while
it's and will there become a backlash on this? Will there become a point where we all just kind of go, enough is enough? And there are, I'm looking into places where young people particularly, are coming together, and there's no screens, there's no phones, and we're sitting and communing together side by side, reading books, listening to a little bit of music, and there's not a phone in sight. So there are these kind of little islands of sanity that are popping up where there aren't this kind of continual interaction with technology. And, my hope is that, there are more places like this grow as we have an understanding that we are losing so much of what makes us human and as our own humanity, that we will put the phone down and seek out genuine connection with each other, before we lose the capacity to be able to.
But don't you think that humans get bored of stuff, and they'll get bored of AI, and it'll move on? And that's why these groups of communing are happening, because people are just, it's enough's enough. It's like, we used to, watch television, but now we got over television because it just got too much. We went out and we did other things. The big thing is social atrophy at the moment. No one's going out and talking about it, talking to each other. But I reckon we're going to have a boredom. Everyone's going to go, we're bored. We don't need AI for what, to create relationships. And we're going to start getting together again. It's just going to be a cycle, like all these new things are.
Well, have we moved on from television?
I love your positive outlook.
I think that's really
optimism.
I think we've television we've taken slightly differently, but now they're even doing it on Netflix. That you're not allowed. The series are now releasing things every week. They're not
That's true.
Releasing it all together to kind of go back to when we used to wait for 9:30 on a Friday to watch Cheers or something, you know?
The good old times.
Well, no, but just a more socially understood times that, you know, you have to wait for TV until you've had dinner with the family, or, you know, or you've been to the footy pitch and played with your friends. So maybe it is a positive outlook. It's just another outlook that I see, that humans are still neurologically stimulated and get bored easily, and therefore new things need to happen. Why couldn't that be the case? Why couldn't the future look like that we use AI for what it's needed for, to summarize, to create, to help us proceed our human experience forwards, rather than thinking it's going to take over the world and we're all going to have to sit and twiddle our thumbs for the rest of our lives, because that's not going to happen. And, you know, is it going to turn into the Brave New World? Was Aldous Huxley right? We'll put that in the show notes for people who don't know what that book is, because, you know, because he talked about, you know, procreation on a very different scale, you know. So I want to flip it and go,
boredom as a concept is really, really critical, because at the moment, AI and social media is actually doing that. It's eliminating boredom. And there's research now coming out that shows, from a developmental perspective, and Carrie might be able to talk more about that, how important boredom is. Boredom is actually when our brain grows, and we are so boredom aversive now. It's like, if you are on a train, if you're even on public transport, right? How many people are not on their phones, right? It's just, you know, as soon as we sit down, as soon as anyone sits down, it's like, boom, phone in hand, right? It's like, we are not actually, we're not being bored anymore. And that's actually dangerous. So I love that you brought that up, Danny. Boredom is so important.
But there isn't the research that shows that it also increases creativity and, you know, contemplation. It increases it, but at the moment, creativity in our minds is reducing because we're not allowing ourselves to just be. Look out the window.
That's exactly
count
right.
the cows. Look at the, you know, look at whatever.
Yes.
Other people.
But what I worry about is that, you know, the boredom, right, is uncomfortable again, right? And that we're still in a time where being uncomfortable with anything is not something that we deal with very often, right? That we don't encourage, that we don't encourage young people these days to sit with discomfort anymore.
It's absolutely fascinating, Bianca, but can you talk to about a bit more as well, Carrie, like the research around why boredom is so important for our development?
I think you really nailed it. I think it is about that opportunity for us to be creative and discover what we are capable of, especially when we are thinking about children and young people. Those opportunities aren't known, I think, to kids the way we might know them as adults. So having that creative play and that chance to just engage with more natural elements can be very stimulating. Often we give kids apps and games with a lot of rules, and they feel that they have to follow the rules. So that what boredom gives them the opportunity to have much more open-ended play. But I just should add, it doesn't mean that apps aren't completely incapable of supporting that. There can be like a doll's house apps that are less stimulating, where kids are open-ended and creative as well. So I don't think it's just whether technology removes boredom. I think it can also be how we use it. Is there enough of a canvas on certain apps to let kids be creative while not still, you know, expecting them to just stare out the window, which has always been hard. And, you know, Plato had the moral panic back in the day that writing would mean that people forgot how to use their memory. So we don't need to forget that either. I think there has always been moral fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to bring up this sitting in discomfort just for a moment, because you've always got to be happier, or you've always got to be doing something which you want, you know, there's got to be always something there. Where's that come from?
I'm going to give that to Carrie, actually, because I think from a developmental point of view.
I mean, parents, of course, it's come from. What's the facts behind that? Why we can't sit in discomfort?
Oh, that's a good question, Danny. I think that the answer is almost in the name. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? And I don't look, children and adults don't like that feeling. And it is something that we have probably reduced more and more by having instant gratification. Whereas in the past, everything took longer, and children, were more used to having to wait in order to be gratified. So I think perhaps that's why we are seeing that struggle now. If you turn on an app, it is designed to give you that gratification. We have noises. If you get something right, you pass the level, you get an animation that dances up and down, you get a happy noise, you get a medal, a virtual medal, you get a lot of good gratification that if we are, rolling a ball and seeing if we can hit the wall, nobody's doing a cheerleader dance on the side for us. So I think in that sense, we have trained our brains to want that gratification.
It's like a dopamine hit, isn't it?
It
again
is.
And again
I
and
was
again and
just
again.
going to raise that.
Yeah.
A lot of social media and a lot of the gaming is literally it's like a dopamine factory. It's just like hit after hit after hit. That's sort of
there is definitely, I agree with you, Danny, as well. There is a place for technology. Absolutely. Like, I've used it as a tool for my son. He's autistic, as I mentioned earlier, and it's very regulating for him, and it can be a very kind of safe, comforting place for him to enter into to regulate his emotions. I do also very clearly say to him that there was autism around before technology. So there also is a capacity to be able to regulate it without it. And he doesn't like me saying that, which is, understandable. But there is a point where I have to get him off. And because then he gets more dysregulated if he's on it for too long. So then it's this continual push-pull balance between getting my son on and off this device, which is basically a dopamine-inducing, beautiful realm of all the possibilities, where he doesn't have the ability to be able to sit in boredom anymore. And I guess we've just been handed this extreme technology with all of these billionaires, with all of these, the psychology around it is just to entice us into it. And I feel like, we've just done this mass experiment on our children, I guess. And as adults, our generation are trying to navigate all of this complexity and saying, yeah, it's good, but, not too much of it. And how do we navigate our way through it and put those, again, safe guidelines in place? And I feel like there's we are the adults in the room as well, and I guess we've just created this mass social experiment with our children, which is incredibly upsetting to see, particularly when you're saying around boredom, and like I go past on the bus stop the phones in schools, but you see them at the bus stop, they're all just scrolling, or all on the train. There's no time for just sitting in the discomfort of boredom and the daydreaming and the ability to be able to create stories in your brain, and to even catch the eye of somebody across the road who you might like the look of, that intimacy, the passion. I've got a 7-year-old daughter as well, and I'm very, very strict with her around the screen. In basically, there is no screen, and she won't be getting a phone until she's 18.
Love it.
I don't know if that will actually work, but she can save up for herself. Probably about $5,000 the time she gets till she's 18. So expensive. Yeah,
I know. I think it's so difficult, I think, because when they become teenagers, it's the sense of belonging, to balance that with trying to keep them safe is very, very difficult. And I speak from lived experience here as well. I try to do the you'll get a monetary reward if you hold off with a social media until you're 18. And I was 100% sure my daughter was going to go for that, and she didn't. She ended up going, no, I really want this social. This was before the ban. And she was like, no, I really want Snapchat because that's what all my friends communicate on. I'm missing when they're going to the park. I'm missing when, they're going to the shopping center. And she felt left out. And that was more important to her than the monetary reward that she would have gotten at 18. And I thought that was fascinating to watch, because I was certain she was going to go for that. And she thought she was too, until she got into high school, and then everything changed.
Yeah. How old was she when she got Snapchat, if you mind me asking?
I think she was 13. She had just turned 13, so she was allowed to get it.
Yeah.
And then she lost it again with the social media ban, which was quite funny.
The phone was on the wall, wasn't it? When I used to come home from school, and the phone had the longest cord ever, and then we got the mobile one, and I used to sit for like hours talking to my friend who I'd only just seen at school. And for hours, and my mum would be like, "Can you get off the phone? Somebody's trying to get, like, can we use the phone?" And it is that. Like, I kind of go, that's what we did when we were younger, and I don't want to deny that. I mean, I gave my son a phone when he was 14. He still doesn't have any apps, social media on it. He just uses it as a phone and a texting, because he really can't regulate. He likes Facebook Marketplace, I must admit, but for PC parts. And then he built himself a PC computer, and that was it. I was like, well, I can't keep you off the computer. You've built it. So, oh dear.
But for kids
but it's interesting, right? You see all the goods and the bad, right? He built a PC.
That's amazing.
That's a skill. That is a really great skill. Like, that is something, that not many kids could do that. And that's terrific. So it's always really tricky. This whole balance between positive and negative is, I think, one of the greatest challenges we have at the moment.
Yeah, and that is one of my frustrations with the social media ban. We see things getting banned, like YouTube sign-ins, where we could see how to build those computer parts, and connections with other people who are also interested. Plenty of young people who are interested in technology aren't going to find that group and that tribe at school. It opens up a world of opportunity, and there can be amazing skills that we can learn online. The ability to code isn't something we're going to learn on a paper book, sitting next to our teacher who doesn't know. It is something that, to thrive and to grow, we probably do need to share and to access others. So there can be such wonderful things too, and I'm not sure if our social media delay has quite found the nuances in capturing that.
It's about who owns a technology and the purpose of why they own it, and driving it towards us. And if we owned it, so if we had our own social media collective platform that was owned by Australia or owned by the collective community, then we would be able to have these platforms where we don't have the infinite scroll, where we have the popping up screen every 15 minutes go, maybe you should get up and do something, or hey, you're like all your friends online and they're only 50 meters down the road, why didn't you get up and go and see them? Just little bits and bobs in place to actually encourage us to get off the actual technology, but use a technology as a tool. And say, like, for YouTube, for instance, it's an amazing platform. My stepson, I mentioned, Jai, he learned the piano from YouTube. And I reflected back on that. Yeah, he copied it. He's a complete geek, and he copied. And he's now a professional pianist from YouTube.
Oh wow!
And he would not have had that had he not.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. So if I had the ban been in place when because he's 29 now, he wouldn't have had that opportunity. So it's a fascinating conversation, and could talk to you all day actually about it.
I want to try and bring it
bring it together, Danny.
But I have a question for both of you. And, Lou and I have read a book called How to Fall in Love with the Future by Bob Hopkins. It's a great book, but he talks about time traveling. So I want to ask you the question of, is 2035, we are living in it right now. What do you see in 2035 in relationship to this AI and cyber psychology in the world?
I think AI has got so much further to grow. I think we're only in the early stages. So I think in 2035, I would expect we're going to have more developed technology. I think rather than using our phones to interact with AI, it's going to be projected into rooms against walls, and is probably going to be a more immersive experience, more pervasive. Perhaps we'll have seen a backlash. I just think that might be a bit further away, especially for adults. I think that schools will start to take more steps, so maybe we'll see more technology banned there. But I think for a lot of adults and in a lot of learning environments, we will see bigger, better, and stronger AI. So I think a backlash might be a bit further away.
How are we?
Yeah, that's such a good question, isn't it? I think that those relationships are going to get more real with AI. I think that we're going to probably have more of a divide between people who feel comfortable in human interactions and have those social skills, perhaps from an earlier time, and those people who have allowed themselves to build only AI-style connections. I think that we're seeing in other countries, as it is, the challenge is worse than it is here. I think in China, AI is already a bigger problem, and we're already seeing grief and loss when AI companions are updated and turned off. So I think we're going to see that growing substantially, and I think we're going to see human relationships taking a bit of a hit, and us psychologically.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's hope Bianca's more positive.
How's 2035 for you today?
I don't know. I mean, I think, okay, considering I got my PhD in cognitive psychology, I strongly believe that, obviously our brain is our greatest tool, and without a shadow of a doubt, right? So a friend of mine just recently told me that she almost implemented something like phone mindfulness, which I really liked. We've got timers, we've got this, we've got that. But she said, I do something very simple. She goes, every time I pick up the phone, I actually ask, why am I picking up the phone? And I thought, oh, I like that. And I started doing that. And I went, and a lot of times I pick it up because I'm bored, because I'm, for reasons not, I have to respond to this message, or, we pick it up for many, many reasons. My hope for 2023 is that we become more aware of that we have more of that awareness as to why are we picking up the phone. One of the things that worries me is that I feel like even that comes from a little bit of a place of privilege. There's now research that shows that, that I think the more educated you are, the more aware you are of the dangers, and the more you're almost scaling back on it as well. And I worry a little bit that that divide becomes greater, so that with that sort of, level of education and awareness, that, those people become better and better at sort of almost avoiding the online pitfalls versus people who don't have that opportunity. And I think we're already divided enough as a society, full stop. So one thing what really bugs me is that I think particularly with AI, we had the opportunity to make ourselves better, right? More empathy, more kindness, and we didn't. So my hope really is that someone is actually going to come up with something like that, where we use it for the greater good, not the greater bad. And that we actually use it to literally make us, because we have this opportunity here literally as a whole of society to be better.
I think that's a great quote to finish on, doing it for the greater good rather than the greater bad.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
That really opens our eyes to where we need to go and we need to be in 2035.
Yeah.
I want to bring it to a close, Lou.
I was just thinking about my own reflection on 2035, and I'm down with the techno oligarchs. They have been disbanded, and they're all living in Mars, and they're living on Mars, and they've left us all alone to crack on with humanity, and they can go and do their outreach post over there, and we have created our own islands of sanity around technology, which is governed by us as collective humans. And we have all the safeguards in place that we come together through that I talked about in a democratic process. So that would be my, and yes, we all go out into nature without our phones from time to time. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed meeting you both and having a chat. And thank you for taking the time to come and have a chat with us on Pollination Media, which is a new platform for us as we're building this company called Phoenix Organization. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Opportunity.
Yeah.